Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, you are audible, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Hi, Shruti.
Hi, Kritika. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. I have sent invites to all the people and I've also followed with them. So
Mhm.
hopefully people will be joining in the meantime.
No problem.
We'll start in another 1 minute.
Okay.
Yeah, people are joining. I think we can start. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session on decoding compliance, missing link between law, risk, and business. Today is a very special session for us because we are having Advocate Shruti Deshpande with us. She's the founder and managing partner of Flag GRC, which is into compliance. And educationally, she holds a master degree in international business law from the University of London. And she's also an internationally certified compliance and ethics professional by the Compliance Certification Board of SCCE USA and a certified senior lead auditor for ISO 37301 compliance management system. And she has an experience of over 15 years in the field of GRC, and she has worked for the clients around 50 plus global jurisdictions, and she has wide experience in various industries and sectors. And also, she has helped people at their leadership level as well as at the other levels. She also has experience in law tech automation workflows, such as contracts, litigation, license, show cause notice, etc. And also, she has headed and mentored multi-diverse and multidisciplinary teams to be process-driven and highly aligned. And she has work experience with great mentors, with great professionals, and all other things. And today, we are fortunate enough to study and learn about the compliance and the missing link, what to do, what not to do, with a very practical insight from her. And I request everyone to make the best use of the session. It's over to you, Shruti.
Thank you, Kritika, for that detailed introduction. And I was just going through the audience list and I could see people joining from outside India as well. At least they have registered. So before I say good evening to everybody, my greetings to everyone as per their respective time zones. So, so I think people are still joining, but let's start. So first of all, thank you, Kritika, for giving me this opportunity. I love to hold such sessions because it's a great opportunity to learn and share with the industry peers and the future lawyers of the audit compliance professionals of the industry. So thank you for having me here, firstly. And secondly, just Kritika, confirm to me once if I'm rightly audible.
Yeah, you are audible, Shruti. If there is
Okay.
anything, I will be letting you.
Sure. Thank you. And so thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today on a Saturday evening, which is generally supposed to be the time for, unwinding from the work a bit. And that means all the more pressure on me actually to make it worth your while since you are, since you all have joined us on Saturday evening. So thank you especially for that. And When I was going through the list of attendees, I generally get a sense of attendees just to adjust the tone of the session accordingly and handle complexity, slowly so that all can follow the session along very comfortably. And so I could see that it's a great mix today of, the law students or the professionals, working professionals, freshers, interns, and even I could see some legal counsels or established legal or compliance professionals as well. So it's a great mix, but then you will also have to excuse me a bit if I take a slightly longer route to, actually talk about the complexity so that everyone can understand the basics and then we all can have a wonderful session. So with that background, I'm just going to share my screen. I have prepared a few slides just as talking pointers. So let me see once the screen is visible. Is the present
Yeah, Shruti, the screen is up.
and the
Yes.
presentation view is visible?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay, great. As I said, we are going to start first. Kritika has given my introduction in a detailed way. And the company that I have founded, Flag GRC, we also have a co-founder who comes from the tech experience, and he and I run this company together. We started this just 2 years ago. So just wanted to touch upon the introduction point and the Flag GRC name as well quickly. And now I think coming to the main topic of decoding compliance as the missing link between business law and risks. Firstly, let's get to the point as to what is this buzzword of compliance. So those who are actually getting oriented to the word of compliance as part of their internships, or those who are just the students at student stage right now. So for them, let's first talk about what compliance is. So compliance, as the name suggests, it's a very simple term that means adherence to obligations. Or complying or adhering with whatever sets of obligations you've been given. But where do they originate from? Regulatory compliance, that means they originate from the laws made by Parliament. So that's the statutory or regulatory part first. That's the type of compliance. Second is the contractual compliance. So when businesses enter into contracts with each other, they agree to certain terms and conditions, and that is also something from where obligations may arise. Thirdly, corporate compliance framework. Now, in order to meet the compliance obligations, in order to ensure that there's no gap while fulfilling these compliance obligations, there are lots of processes, procedures, technology, people that need to be put in place. And that entire landscape together of tracking, reporting, monitoring, change management, and lots of other processes which are put in place together, that entire thing is called a separate compliance framework. Every company may not have it as a corporate compliance framework as well defined, but every may be calling it differently, and the maturity level also may be very different for every company or every organization. But that is also a source from where your obligations may flow, although not directly from laws and regulations. The fourth source is your ISO standards, technical standards like BIS specifications, quality standards, or any other standards that I may not, but you may have taken either a voluntary certification of, or it may be mandatory basis applicable to you. So that could be another source of your obligations as compliance. Now, operational and internal controls is one more source. Now, generally, this forms a subset of the corporate compliance framework. It may form a subset, but some companies, as I said, may not have a very mature framework, robust framework as such, and they can only work to the extent of having operational or internal controls, your internal SOPs, your production-related SOPs, your safety audit checklist, etc. So from those internal operational department-specific SOPs and controls, also your compliance obligations may flow. And the sixth one is ethics. Now, compliance is fine, but compliance comes from all the rule books or the statutory or regulatory instruments. But there are certain obligations that also flow from your ethical code of conduct, ethical standards that company has, because compliance and ethics always go hand in hand. So you may have if you're a lawyer, if you're any other professional service provider, then you may have your own behavioral ethics code as well as for that profession, or you may have developed a code of conduct for your company, which may give you certain ethical standards to be followed. So generally, these are the sources from where your compliance obligations may follow. So when I utter the word compliance, these could be some of the things that may come that you may all picture. But this is not it. There could be more to this as we, as you go on working, you might realize this is just a very generic landscape of the sources of compliance obligations. So let's say I now know the broader bucketing of sources of compliance obligations, but how do I really identify my own compliance landscape and exactly from where they may come, right? So firstly, I've just tried to categorize certain different types of laws into these buckets. But again, as I said, standard disclaimer, this is not it. This is a very fluid, generic, vague bucketing that I have done just for you to get a sense of what type of laws, regulations, standards I'm talking about when I was showing you the last slide. So you can see some of the operational laws, some ESG related laws, finance and taxation related standard regulations, IT, data privacy, information security related laws, COPSEC related laws, market regulations could be there, intellectual property rights regulations could be there, or industry or sector specific, depending on what industry you are in. Some of the regulations could be applicable to you. But again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. And even to this extent, I'm going to say that this is not it. And we are slightly seeing how the difficulty or complexity rises when you utter the word compliance. So now let's say for you again to be able to picture better as to what exact, so you've gotten to know the laws, maybe you know now from where you can find the laws, but what type of compliance obligations I'm talking about. Okay, you know that, okay, there's a Companies Act, or there's Environment Protection Act, or there's a privacy regime of every country, but what kind of obligations we may have to do. Now that actually could be your compliance. So I have again tried to keep a very broad segregation here of external time-bound critical compliances on the left-hand side, and internal less time-bound and less critical compliances on the right-hand side. Again, let me tell you, I'm only calling them less time-bound and less critical. I'm not calling them not time-bound or not critical. So you could be, there could be certain displays that you have to put on your premises according to certain laws. You have to maybe manage certain records. You may have certain production standards. You may have certain disclosures to be made on your website. You may have basic licenses, registrations, permits to be procured or obtained from authorities. You may have certain things to be reported to, let's say, external authorities, like if there is a breach in of data, then you may have to data privacy, then you may have to report to authorities within certain number of hours, etc. Also, while you must be going through this slide, I have also put a marking on certain compliances in terms of just to give you an idea of how easy to implement they could be, whether they could be expensive, cost-oriented or not. And by putting in place certain things, you could call them deemed compliances. As against certain compliances, which could be extremely cost-consuming or expensive to execute, and which could also require lots of process changes or overhaul process changes or processes at your end to be able to comply with them. So, for example, let's say there could be packaging or labeling related compliances. Now you have to, first of all, design those packaging and labeling articles, and then you have to make sure that your vendors also, your brand owners also follow that. You have to make sure that your whatever disclosures you're going to make on those packaging and labeling, they have to actually match your production standards. And if they are not matching your production standards, because law is very clear generally about what you have to disclose on those packages, etc. If they are not matching, you have to revisit your production standards. So these could really, that is one example of how a compliance can be really expensive to execute. You will have to put in lots of processes to make sure that they are, you are able to comply with them. As against, let's say you have your annual report ready and you just have to make sure that you are putting it on the website, or you have a no smoking board to be displayed on your premises. It's a very simple thing. Just to be very practically speaking, you take you take any royalty free image from Google, you just print it, you put it on your premises. So some of them could be very, very easy to implement. So like that, the point of this whole slide or all these examples is that the effort, the criticality, the methodology to implement all these compliances could be extremely subjective, depending on your, on what type of company you are, and depending on what kind of industry risks you have. So it really, as the point I was trying to make on the earlier slide also, it is all very fluid. There's no rule book as such that can guide you to do all of this. So even the categorization that I'm showing here, if you attend another, compliance session, or if you if you have any compliance related knowledge from any other sources, you could see that they may have bucketed it differently. So there are a number of ways in which you can look at compliance. So this is just one of the ways to what the word compliance is. So again, to get you all to the next level of, slightly upper level of complexity. Let's say I'm going back to the last slide again to show you waste management here, for example. If you're talking about the waste management compliance, again, in that the complexity rises. You can see here there are so many types of waste that your organization has to look into depending on your business operations and the type of unit that you have. So again, in that you may have so many kinds of compliance obligations to be done. For example, you have to maintain records of waste generation quantums, you have to file returns, you have to appoint agencies to dispose of your waste correctly. Then you may have to segregate it internally properly as long as it is in your premise. You have to put waste minimization effort, extended producer responsibility. It's a very important thing. Currently, I'm referring to some Indian environmental protection laws. Again, I'm making this disclaimer because I saw the list and I think there are people joining from the other countries as well. So extended producer responsibility, it's a very important waste management compliance nuance that everybody has to look into. So the point again of the slide is that the subjectivity could go deeper and deeper as you dig more into it, and you can actually say that there's no end to which the depth can really go when you actually talk about the compliance obligations landscape and universe for your organization. Similarly, I have given two more examples of if you're talking about supply chain, then what all you will have to take care of. And if you're talking about some of your third-party indirect obligations, what all things you may have to take care of. So you may have read the slide. In the interest of time, I'm moving ahead. So let's say we have now, I think those who are just taking or just diving deeper into compliance for the first time, let's at least say that I've tried my best to get you all to the same page, in a few minutes, just for you to understand the entire remaining discussion in the context of compliance. So let's say you've understood compliance, you're able to picture it better now in front of your eyes. Let's now talk about businesses. So I was actually, I had made it a point to definitely share one anecdote here that I had heard very recently on one of the podcasts. The series is called as Acquired. If you all are interested, by the way, I would highly recommend it to you as well if you like to hear business stories. Like from day one of the business to where they are now. So these people on Acquired, They discuss business stories, and as it's a long format podcast. And I was listening to one of their. By the way, it's available on Spotify. I don't know about the other platforms, so if you are interested. So I was listening to their episode of Starbucks, and the co-host from Starbucks side on the podcast was Howard Schultz, who's the man, the then CEO, the man behind Starbucks' unimaginable scalability that we can see now across the globe. So he was just mentioning their expansion to Japan, and that was I think in the context of what we are discussing today, that's an amazing story of how businesses weigh expansions, risk, and the compliance aspect of it. So he was just mentioning that they wanted to expand their operations to international markets. They were currently, I think this is a story about 1995, 96, when already established in US with multiple stores, and they wanted to expand to Japan. And the board was the board was incredibly resistant about the plan, because they said that there's so much of white space already available in USA. So why are you going to international markets? But then Howard had his own passion to expand internally, and he said internationally, and he said, no, I want to do it. So the board put a condition that if you want to expand it into to Japan, we want to hire a consultant first who will do the entire market study, compliance study, legal study, etc. They will give us a report, and only based on that report, we will take this huge risk. Howard had to agree. They actually hired the consultant. The consultant studied the market operations, and the consultant came back with a big book report. They presented it to the management, and basically they cited all the factors that were not at all in favor of any incorporate or extending Starbucks presence in Japan. So of course, I mean, they gave multiple factors like the compliance culture is different, weather conditions are extreme, they are not suitable for coffee, then the economy was unaffordable for Starbucks, and multiple other reasons were involved. Language issues, rather. Nobody spoke English in Japan at that point of time. So there were multiple issues that they cited, and they all decided that this is a complete non-starter and we are not going ahead with Japan. They put that on hold. Howard kept on working on the plan, and one day he received a handwritten letter from one of the Japanese companies whose owner happened to have a restaurant in LA, so he knew Howard, and he basically approached Howard to have a joint venture done and open one shop in Japan. They did that. Of course, their first shop that was opened was in extreme weather conditions. They had to go through all of that. They did that, and if you just generally Google Starbucks today's number of stores in Japan, you will see the number is almost close to 2,000. So this story really struck me, and I was really thinking after this as to being a compliance professional, and most of you, you could be on the either side. Maybe you could be from the business side, from the consultant side, or you could be an in-house, maybe the founder, director, or the general counsel, legal counsel from the company side. But it was very interesting for me to learn how businesses weigh their risks. They are too passionate to think about any compliances, any risks, any what ifs, in terms of when it comes to expansion and growth. So then, do risks really matter? They have to matter, right? As a compliance professional, we have to give some weightage to them. I mean, this could be a fairy tale in the story that I told you, we don't know the details of what happened between 25 years when one store got extended to 2,000 stores. Today, they somehow cracked it, but we don't know how they cracked it. So risks assessment definitely matters, but this Starbucks story was a great example for me, at least, to know how businesses think. So generally, what do businesses think? I mean, many of you must be approaching the board with some of your markets, compliance studies, expansion studies, the risks, etc. But what really goes on businesses' mind? Business growth, international expansion, business profits, market leadership, investors and shareholders, technology adoption, customer satisfaction, and costs and ROI. Now, these must be the answers that you must be getting from the sales team, from the management team, from the senior management team, rather than every time necessarily discussing the risks and compliance on those locations. So Starbucks knew the risks. They were informed of the risks. They still entered the market and they cracked it. So as I said, did the risks matter to them? Maybe yes, but they still were able to navigate through it and somehow go ahead. So, but compliance risks still prevail, right? For a compliance professional, we cannot really, or whoever are responsible for looking at that side of the company, we still cannot fall for that fairy tale, and we still have to do our job. We still have to do the risk assessments, and we still have to, in all those things that I showed you about what businesses thinks, we still have to fit ourselves somewhere over there and maintain our seat and keep guiding them about how to do them. Then should we act as an enabler, or should we act as a disabler? Because nowadays I'm even hearing many interesting podcasts or panel discussions otherwise, that general counsels, lawyers, company secretaries, compliance professionals, they should be an enabler for companies. So how can we really play that role as an enabler? How can we really help our organizations achieve their dreams, like expansions and scalabilities and their day-to-day growth? So risks, of course, are going to be there. Again, taking a step back, for some people who are looking at compliance and risks for the first time here in this session, let me just give you a very simple example of the kind of risks we are talking about here. Let's say if you are growing your business cross-border, there are multiple things that you may be exposed to and you may have to take care of. For example, first could be the privacy part. You may really see where your data is going cross-border, what the other party is doing about it. The second could be supply chain part, who you're dealing with. Do you know your vendor well in the other party? Are they procuring anything from, conflicted countries? Is their supply chain good enough? Is there any bribery, corruption risk, etc.? How's their ESG score? Exports controls and sanctions. If you are exporting to certain countries, are those countries sanctioned? Are those countries barred? Have you had any experiences? What happens if there are product recalls? What are their packaging and labeling standards? What if they send you huge consignments back if you're not complying with their packaging and labeling standards or production standards, etc.? There could be risks of cyber, information security. So are you following their digital marketing practices? Are you just cold calling them? Are you sending them spam emails, unsolicited electronic messages, etc.? And so on. And there could be n number of other risks that you may have to look at if you are, let's say, for example, if you're growing your business cross-border. So this is just one example. So again, for beginners, I would like to once give you the entire risk landscape of, that are generally behind compliances. Again, when I say entire, this is on an illustrative basis because there could be n number of risks. And again, there's no rule book where risks are defined as such. They could be named, they could be termed differently. And there's a lot of fluid area in risks assessment as well. So on the right-hand side, you could see compliance risk exposure areas. On the left-hand side, I flipped it. On the left-hand side, you could see compliance risk exposure areas. On the right-hand side, you could see compliance risk matrix. When I say compliance risk, traditionally, it is also understood as the penal consequences that may happen if you don't comply with the legal provisions, etc. So there could be multiple types of those consequences. For example, there could be fines from the law. There could be Those fines could range from very trivial amounts to hefty amounts. There could be jail, imprisonment to your directors or person in charge of the activity. There could be fine as well as the imprisonment to directors, etc. So traditionally, risk metrics is generally set up by every company where they define these risks, where they bucket these risks into low risk, medium risk, high risk, severe risk, or there could be multiple categorizations. And accordingly, they decide how to prioritize. Also, when you say something is non-compliant, there are multiple facets to this. So non-compliance could be a complete non-compliance. That means you've not done it at all. It could be untimely compliance. So you've done the compliance, but it was so late that it is almost a non-compliance. It could be incorrect compliance. It could be incomplete compliance. It could be that you are complying with it, but you are complying with the older or repealed version of the law. So then ultimately you're not compliant. Also, when you see the penal consequences, there are multiple facets to consider. For example, if the law says that there could be a fine up to 2 lakhs, or there could be imprisonment up to 3 years, nobody is going to do that on day one to your organization. Nobody is going to jail your director on day one, right? There'll be warning notices issued, then there will be show cause notices issued. They will first suspend your license for a few days. If you don't take corrective actions, then they may go to the extreme end of canceling your license, etc. So you have to see what kind of punishments or enforcements have been held in the previous convictions, or how has been the enforcement proceeding, and what are the subsequent offenses penalties, or etc. So there are lots of things when you talk about how to measure compliance risk as well, and there are lots of metrics in detail that you can work on. On the left-hand side, I have given certain risk exposure areas. Some of them we saw on the last slide also as an example. So there could be certain. So if we talk about ESG, that could be that could be bifurcated into ESG social aspect, ESG governance aspect, ESG environmental aspect. There could be certain risk related to regulatory fines, reputational damage, export control, etc. So again, as I said, this is not the entire list. I've just tried to give you a few examples just to give you a sense of what kind of compliance risk are we talking about here. So as we go ahead, so let's say we've talked about business, we've talked about laws so far, we've talked about compliance risks so far. But then what is it that will still help me navigate these three things efficiently? Let's not use the word successfully yet, because that will depend on how you navigate. But efficiently, effectively, how is there a way in which I can bond, or I can bind all these three together, and I can still find a way of enabling my business, their growth and expansion? Maybe yes, right? So that compliance. So it all depends on how you approach your compliance, how you perceive your compliance, that you may actually decide how you can bind these three together. So is that really possible? Can compliance really be an enabler and not a hurdle for businesses? Now, I'm not sure if any business owners have attended this call, but at least from the in-house compliance team's point of view, from the consultant points of view, it's a very typical thing that we keep hearing, that you're not letting us do our business. So can we be really an enabler and not a hurdle for our businesses? Maybe yes. How? Only if you approach compliance correctly. So now, what are these approaches? I'm just going to talk about certain approaches that can help you. By the way, just one maybe 30 seconds pause to know if anybody has any questions so far, if I'm proper, if you would like to ask anything, or if I have to go a little slow, or you have not
Maybe,
understood anything.
yeah. Hi,
Yes.
this is Mohan here. I have a question. So you mentioned about the podcast about the Starbucks, right? Could you please
Yes.
let me know the podcast name or title?
The name of the podcast is Acquired, and it talks about business stories. It's on Spotify. And one more example, just on a lighter note here. Actually, I don't follow cricket, but they have recently also come up with this long episode on IPL and its commercialization. And I was fascinated to hear the story of IPL and how it's a billion-dollar industry right now, probably the most earning industry in all the leagues all over the world. So thank you for asking me that question. I'm glad that you're interested. You can definitely listen to this one on Spotify.
Thanks, Shruti.
Sure. Anybody else, or maybe I can just go ahead? Okay.
There
Yes.
is a question from Himani.
Yes.
As you are sharing screen, I believe you'll not be able to see that. The question is,
Yes, please.
she's asking if there is any Indian government exam for consultancy. If yes, please help me, ma'am.
If there is any exam for consultancy.
Yeah,
Okay.
Humani, can you please explain your question?
Yes, please feel free to unmute and elaborate your question. I'd be happy to take that up.
Ma'am, is there a consultancy exam? Indian government consultancy exam. If any, please tell me.
As far as I know, Himani, there's no generic Indian government consultancy exam, but I would be happy to research more and tell you. But consultancy is a huge term. It's a vague term. It includes, it includes multiple types of professional services. It includes CAs, CS, lawyers, company, or let's say MBA professionals, and legal, different sorts of legal professionals. So it really, the range is really diversified, and therefore, as far as I know, only those respective professional exams will only be relevant. At least in my span of career, I have not seen anybody cracking a separate special exam as such for any consultancy experience.
Excuse me, ma'am. Ma'am, travel and tourism consultancy, any exam is there?
You are not very clearly audible. Maybe you would like to type down the question. Should I proceed until then and we can come back to the question at the end again? Okay, I'm taking that as a yes. So let's see if, compliance can be an enabler and not a hurdle. We are discussing that, yes, it is possible. How? It all depends on how you approach it correctly, right? You can approach it in the risk-based compliance manner. You can approach it as a principles-based compliance. You can approach it as technology and data-driven compliance. You can perceive it as impact-based compliance, as governance-based compliance, strategy-based compliance, and scalability-based compliance. Again, these are the types that I have been able to put together from my experience so far. It's not a rule book. I'm happy to hear from you if you have any other parameter, or also some of these parameters could overlap depending on what exactly your program is. But in my experience, if you really look at or approach compliance in these ways, it has definitely worked wonders for organizations irrespective of their size. So we can see each type separately, and then we can discuss some examples there. So first is risk-based approach. I think even regulators understand that businesses need some flexibility, some breather when they are inventing something, when they are working in a very dynamic area. Now, of course, the very general sentiment in the market would be that this is unfathomable. This is just not true because government is always blamed for imposing more and more compliance on businesses, and the ease of doing business is completely lost at times. But I will tell you why I'm saying this. We can take this example of AI, artificial intelligence, everybody's favorite term these days, a big time buzzword. Even when we go and sell our tools, people keep asking us, have you built AI into the system? Then we have to tell them, sir, if we build AI, your data will go to Meta. Is that okay with you? So, it's a buzzword to that extent that everybody wants to use AI in their personal professional life. So let's see how regulators have approached AI in that case. Have they given enough flexibility to businesses to still thrive in the environment while still making sure that whatever threats AI is causing, whatever adverse effects AI is causing can still be controlled and regulated? I think so, yes. Of course, we will know the effectiveness of these regulations once it is completely effective. It's currently only partially effective. But if you see European Artificial Intelligence Act, that has already entered into force in this Feb 2025, some part of it is already enforceable. If you see, they have taken a big time risk-based approach. They have divided the entire legislation's obligations into 4 types. of risks: minimal risks, limited risks, high risks, and unacceptable risks. So they say, so any tech companies who are playing in the who are designing or developing AI solutions that cause only minimal or limited risks according to the criteria given in the law, then they have imposed minimal, types of compliance obligations on them. But at the same time, if somebody is giving a solution which is falling under high risk, for example, which could significantly affect people's health, safety, fundamental rights, etc., then they may definitely have bigger burden of compliance, as their disclosure levels, transparency levels will have to be extremely high. So like that, the government has also taken risk-based approach. In certain cases, this is one example. We could see many other authorities also working in that direction. And that is the approach that even organizations can follow when they are approaching or embracing compliance mechanism. Now, just one more thing about AI is that governments have given regulatory sandboxes within which or authorities have offered that, within which the tech companies can invent, if some of their products face legal challenges or they don't fit within the existing legal framework, then they can still get flexibility to still work on those products and see how they work, etc. So those kind of regulatory sandbox is a great example of how government is trying to give some breathing space in the AI risk. And on the left-hand side, if you could see just one of the dashboards, this is from our tool that I have just taken a screenshot. So this is where I just wanted to show how organizations can also internally look at compliance as from the risk-based approach. First, by starting to put the entire landscape of risk, and then you can have a reverse engineering done on compliance. So first find out your risks and then go deeper into that to find out your compliances and then address them on priority. You can keep the low risk, medium risk for later, address the high risks and severe risks first, and accordingly those risk exposure areas. So risk-based approach goes a long way in terms of easing out your compliance burden easing out your compliance burden at once. So that was the first approach that I wanted to explain. Second is principles-based approach. Now, if you've helped your companies to obtain ISO certification, you must have seen that ISO standards are extremely principles-based. Even 37301, which is about compliance management systems of ISO, that is also extremely principles-based. So they will give you the ultimate objectives and the ultimate principles that companies should adhere to. How you should design your stepwise compliance program internally, what kind of controls you have to have in place, what kind of provisions you have to have in place. In that, your entire checklist can be your own checklist. Again, to give you a more relatable example, GDPR, everybody must have heard of, General Data Protection Regulation. The entire regulation is principles-based. I have tried to put here some of the data processing principles. Now, within which these principles, they have not given you any checklist, any very, very definitive checklist as to what you should follow. They have just told you that as long as you are playing within these principles, you have the flexibility to design your own compliance program. So that again gives some breather. And if you follow that kind of principles-based approach, even in your internal mechanism. Now, internal mechanism examples I've given on the left-hand side. If you try to understand, rather than what of the compliance, if you try to understand the why of the compliance, you may definitely get a more feasible answer to any compliance challenge. So rather, very frequently while advising clients to say that, no, this is something we can't do, it's increasing our costs, or, it's not really fitting our operations, suiting our operations, nobody does this in the market. We often go to the extent of finding out why the legislature has asked this. If you understand the principle, the kind of workaround that you can give to the client definitely fits within the legal framework, and while at the same time also helps client overcome those challenges. So you have to look beyond symptoms. You have to also, in your in-house compliance teams or legal teams, try and encourage critical thinking about every provision as to why the company has to do this, why the law must be asking you to do this. whenever there are non-compliances, of course, as part of audits, this is a very typical process, but then do it more meaningfully, even from the compliance side. Don't wait for the audits to give you those root causes. Find out the root causes of non-compliances rather than just killing symptoms and, taking the corrective action on it. So if you go to the root causes, that will also help you study the principle behind that compliance, and it will give you better solutions to do those compliances. So I think principle-based approach also goes a long way. Third approach that I had stated was technology and data-driven compliance approach. Now, again, I have some amazing examples. Basically, Flat GRC is a startup we just started 2 years ago, and we already have a full-fledged tool. And we spoke to certain MSMEs just to see if they need any help on the compliance landscape, and we were wonderfully pleased to see that even 80 crores companies or 100 crores companies, 250 crores companies who do not actually, the regulators would not even advise them to have our automation in place or data-driven compliance approach in place, but they approached us on their own to have the tool implemented so that they can have a more sustainable process in place. So that was an amazing experience for us, that when we approached them, they were already looking for a compliance tool when they were not even that big as per the market standard to implement something like that. So I think technology and data-driven approach also helps you in the long run. Again, here, if you are too small as an organization, now is the time to embrace technology in your compliance management, because currently the kind of data that you're handling is still very manageable. If you are mid-sized, it is not yet that late to invest in technology to streamline and centralize your entire compliance management. But if you are big and you've not yet taken this approach, then you are in big trouble. It's because then it means that you're not on top of your compliance data, and that has already gone haywire. So forget just a GRC tool. If you are that big, then you should be rather talking integration of your entire tech universe and not just the GRC tool. So that is how important the technology and data-driven approach is. So generally, just two examples that I thought of putting as to what happens if you do technology and data-driven compliance, or what are the trigger points when you should really start thinking. So we were working with an MSME, which was a really small company, and they had mergers and acquisitions going on, and their due diligence process almost went for 6 months because none of their data was being maintained properly. Everything was manually maintained. So if you're struggling with, if you're under intense scrutiny during acquisition, merger, due diligence, then now is the trigger point that you should start thinking about automation. Another trigger point is also, rather than running in 10 different directions to pull your data every time somebody asks you for the audit, why not have everything centralized, put in one place, and just streamlined so that your audits can be more efficient and faster. So if by doing this, you can really stay ahead of the entire regulatory curve. You can have all your compliance universe built in one place. You can have your compliance history built over the years on the single platform. You can have early warnings of potential non-compliances, and there are n number of other benefits if you go by this route. Basically, it helps your organization to remain attentive by default at all times, no matter how big you scale. Now, impact-based compliance approach, again, when I say impact, what I mean is that do not just tick the box. Do that very sincerely. When I say sincerely, I'm not talking about the moral aspect of it or the ethical aspect of it. I'm talking about the actual impact aspect of it. So use your compliance to your advantage. When we are recently facing the ISO audit for our own tools, 27001 is the audit that we are facing. And we realized that because we are going for that audit, it's an opportunity for us to strengthen our own processes, to scale them up really well. And we are really liking it. So that is, I think, the approach that will help you really embrace compliances, that use it to your advantage, empower your people, strengthen your processes, elevate your technology, and aim for the actual real impact and not just the kickoff. So make it really smart. Again, this is some picture that I got from Google. This is not my term, please. So I just liked it. So make it smart, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So for example, put compliance initiatives in your team's performance evaluations and give them, quantifiable targets, tie them to your incentives so that they can be motivated. Also, introduce certain disciplinary actions if, there's consistent non-compliance. So by doing all of this, you are giving them more attainable targets. And I think that will also create huge impact. In terms of governance-based compliance approach, again, of course, governance meaning, again, it's such a fluid term, but in this context, I'm using it in a very specific way. So tone from the top needs to be ensured. The company has to know that your board is extremely serious about it, and it is not just coming as a mandatory mandate. So set up board committees, take quotes from leaderships, make sure that they flow to your other teams also, and set up the 3 lines of model, give a seat to your compliance officer in the board meetings, make sure that they have their own voice in the board meetings, etc. So there are a number of things that I mentioned here. But I think if you have that kind of governance-based compliance approach, also I have mentioned about multiple lines of defense model of for governance. So establish, no matter how small your team is, establish first line of defense, second line of defense, third line of defense, put accountability on people, let them know that they are accountable for this initiative. Then that will bring that culture, and that will make sure that, if there is a non-compliance, it definitely goes through a system until the board, and therefore governance will be ensured. So that is also a great way of ensuring compliance, and that will definitely ease out your burden on one single person to monitor everything. And the last 2 types are strategy-based compliance approach and scalability-based compliance approach. So strategy-based meaning, again, I always think I have seen the examples that I gave you of MSMEs. One is a 250 cross company who wanted the tool to be built. They must be having hardly 15 to 20 people in the entire organization taking care of their compliances, but they wanted to build it as their strategy because they know that they are growing. So I was so happy to see that even the the department heads that were talking to me, they couldn't even speak fluent English. They came from the manufacturing setup, but they wanted to roll this out because they said, "Madam, abhi karenge to scalability mein problem nahi aayega, strategy अच्छा कर सकते हैं." So that was really the approach that I could experience, that companies have to use it from the strategic point of view. So by firstly, the most important benefit that everybody will definitely appreciate as a business is that it gives you a competitive advantage. So if you could just position yourself as leaders in regulatory compliance, sustainability, ethics, then I think your competitive advantage also increases. Secondly, it keeps you ready for M&A at all times. So that also directly helps in your business growth. Thirdly, you can integrate compliance into your business planning. You can stay ahead of the regulatory landscape and all those things. But if you are tackling, or if you are entering into any giant contracts with other giant players, and if you are smaller than them, then they will ask you to do certain compliances. So rather than waiting until then, and at the time of bidding, you realize, oh no, we are far behind in the race. Why don't you just position yourself so well that amongst all the other sizes of your competitors, you will stand out because you have this advantage of, a very robust compliance framework that you have. So I think from the strategic point of view, definitely compliance professionals should start looking at compliance, and that will really make you all, fit you all very well comfortably within the business side of the team. I have also given one extra nugget of information here that DOJ's Department of Justice of USA had come up with this new mergers and acquisition safe harbor policy, where they had said that acquiring companies have to voluntarily disclose the acquired company's non-compliances within 6 months of the closing date. So that is the level at which government has gone. And therefore, if you don't have your compliance framework well within the place, definitely even M&As and other business growth and scalability plans are going to go for a toss. And the last one is scalability-based compliance approach. Again, we talked a few of these things in the other approaches also. So identify your compliance universe, track regulatory changes from day one. That is the main takeaway from this point. From day one, have your business continuity plan ready, have your compliance universe drafted ready, have track regulatory changes, outsource it to vendors if you can't do it from time to time, hire experts, invest in scalable tools. If you're investing in certain tools, see if they can invest you with 2 people being hired from you and 200 people being hired by you tomorrow. So build processes that will actually help you grow scale as well. So automate volume management from day one again, because I have seen that half of people's time goes into managing their voluminous data instead of leadership just opting for automation in those things. And so build basically whatever your maturity is, whatever maturity you are dealing with your organization. Have the framework that suits your level of maturity, but have it. That's very important, that you have some kind of framework to manage or streamline your compliances, and that will help you a lot with scalability. So in the end, I would just like to say that compliance may feel like a roadblock, but if you approach it right, it becomes the bridge between business, law, risk, and lasting growth. So you better start building it early, scaling it smartly, and become attentive by default. So that was my bit about this. And I have just, so at Flag GRC, we give end-to-end advisory services around GRC governance, risk, and compliance. We also build a tool, and the tool is already being used by many companies. And these are the few clients that we currently are, servicing, or other who have trusted us for our credentials. So just that bit from my side. Happy to take questions. I think only 5 minutes are left, so I will just keep that time for Q&A or any feedback, any contradictory thoughts or conflicting thoughts, anything that I would like to hear from you all. Yes, please, Vaibhav.
Hi, hi, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening.
Ma'am, actually, I want to know the best approach to go for doing compliance of AML and CFT in cross-border transaction or for an international client. Like, how should I go about for AML and CFT compliance part?
Sure. So I would say, of course, there's a detailed answer to this, but let me just give you a quick bit. So I would say, first of all, it all depends on your locations. What is that location's particular risk, and how bad that location is exposed to AML and CFT risks. So firstly, definitely find that out. Build your risk profile in terms of locations. The industry that you are into also matters a lot when it comes to this. Secondly, I would say build a policy, draft a policy, design a policy based on that, get it reviewed from your board and team, and then implement it. So these 2 steps I can definitely advise in this much time that we have right now. And the rest, I would be happy to chat with you offline.
Ma'am, like if we talk about a common law country, like if we take an
Mm-hmm.
example of a Cayman Island, and then in
Mm.
that kind of country, like how we can go for compliance part for the same AML.
So as I said, the risk exposure in at least the countries that you are stating is extremely high. So you will have to definitely, and it also depends a lot on the kind of industry you are into. If you are into financial industry or any other industry, then definitely you will need a very, very strong policy. But the first starting point for you would be study the country and study and develop a policy. That would be, I think, the first 2 steps that you have to go for when you undertake compliance for this. Yes,
Okay,
please,
ma'am.
Himani.
Thank you.
Sure.
Ma'am, is there any travel and tourism consultancy, international or national exam?
Himani, your voice is not very. Okay, I'm just reading out your message. Travel and tourism consultancy exam, international level or national level. Sorry, I would not be the right person to talk about this, but I'll be happy to help you offline if I can get any leads on this particular thing.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sure. Deepak has said PMP could be considered for consulting on projects. Okay. Is that a query, Deepak, if you would like to? Any other feedback, questions, views?
Hello, good evening, ma'am.
Yes, good evening, sir.
No, I just wanted to find out if this recording will be shared with the attendees or not.
Yes, it will be
I
shared.
will. Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It will be shared by Monday because tomorrow we'll be off. So by Monday, it will be shared with you.
All right. Thank you.
From
Thank
where
you.
from where are you joining this session, sir? If I may ask.
Pardon me?
From where are you joining this session? Are you joining from India?
No, I'm joining from Windhoek, Namibia.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Noted, Deepak. Thank you. So, Kritika, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Shruti. The first thing is I would like to apologize for the number of the participants because honestly, I myself has sent invite for about 200 email IDs. It was 90 something from LinkedIn and we had 100 registrations in the website. So considering that the quorum is very low, but I am really happy that the participation, that the interaction with the quorum was really good. Even though the number is less, the quantity, the quality was like really good. Everyone here, like every single individual was very keen. I think they heard every single word that came out of your mouth for the last 1 hour. And also they learned from it. That
Thank you, Kritika, for organizing this. And thank you, everybody, for joining this even on Saturday. And all of you have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Have a great
Thank you.
weekend.
Thank
And
you so
thank you,
much,
Shruti.
ma'am.
Thank you so very much.
Thanks. Bye.